Hey guys, if you have been looking at this at Walmart and you don't know what to make, well, why don't you give this a shot? This is a really awesome turban beanie, okay? And it's super simple to make. This stitch is really easy on the hands. It's also really easy on the hook. So all we're going to do is we're going to start out with a chain of 10 for this tutorial. This fits like about a medium-sized head. So for this particular turban, if you want to make it exactly how I did, I used a chain of 15 for the stitch that I'm going to show you guys. And it measures, like I said, it fits like a teenage head and a medium head. So if you have a larger head or a longer head, you may want to make your item like 1 to 2 stitches wider, so that, you know, it covers your ears or doesn't cover your ears, however you want it to fit. And you'll be able to tell if it's too long or too short, you know, right away. Okay, so one other thing, this stitch is really super stretchy. So you may want to compensate by not making so many rows, because it's not like your traditional Tunisian crochet where it has like no stretch and like hardly any give, okay? This has a lot of give, lots of stretch. Okay, and I've done it with a couple different yarns, so it doesn't really matter what yarn you use. It's just the stitch technique that makes it nice and airy. Alright, I'll meet you guys back here with a chain of 10 for this tutorial. And then in the end, I'll show you how to measure it, mark it, and sew it up, okay? Okay, so we're back here with a chain of 10, and we're just going to pick up all of our loops and leave them on the hook. Okay, so I'll meet you guys back down at the end, and we're just going to proceed with the normal closing. Alright, so we have our 10 loops on the hook, and we're going to do a normal closing. So you're going to yarn over, pull up 1 loop, and then you're just going to yarn over and pull through 2 loops all the way down. I'll meet you guys right back here, where we'll start our pattern. Okay, so we are back to the beginning. So now you're going to skip your first bar and your first horizontal loop right there. And we're going to go right over to the next horizontal loop. And we're just going to pick up each one all the way down. So here's your vertical bar and your horizontal loop right here, the front one. Don't forget to pick up your last loop there. And then when we get to the very last 2 loops, normally you would put your hook through both of those. But today, for this video, or this pattern, we're just going to go through the front loop only. So, front loop only, yarn over, and pull up. Okay, and we're just going to do a normal closing. As you can see, there's like very little roll, and we're not even past, you know, we're just now getting ready to close the second row. So this is a really cool pattern if you want to have something that's super flowy and that doesn't roll. Okay, I'll meet you right back here. Okay, so we have row 1 and row 2 done, and as you can see, this is like super stretchy. Okay, so let's continue a couple more times. You're just going to always skip the first vertical bar, the first horizontal loop, and you're always going to go into the next one. Front loop only, all the way down. You're going to follow each row with a normal closing. So when you make your strip long enough, I'll meet you guys back and I'll show you how to sew it all together. Alright, so now we have our piece all whipped up, okay, and then what you're going to do is you're going to fold it in half. Okay, so I just decided to make mine out of this peach because I had some, you know, some stash busting I wanted to do. So anyways, okay, so take your fabric here, fold it in half. This is the inside, the halfway point. And I like to use this side because it curves to the head the best. Okay, so now that you have your middle marked, you're going to take your item, just like this, and you're going to fold it whichever way you like, cross, just like this. Okay, and then from here, you'll want to secure this part because when we flip it over, you don't want this to move. And of course, after we're done, after I show you how to fit it, then you're going to go try it on to make sure that it fits. And if it doesn't fit, then it's a little too snug, then you know, you can obviously add a couple of more rows. And if it is too loose, then you would simply take 1 or 2 rows out at a time to make sure you know, that you get the proper fit. Okay, so once you've decided whether you're going to fold your item this way or this way, okay, go ahead and pin it down. Okay, then what you're going to do is, when you're, sorry about all these threads here, let me get some of this out of the way. Okay, so when you're in the bathroom looking in the mirror, you're going to, you know, slip this over your head. Of course, this is the back right here. And what you're going to do is make sure that you have enough on each side so that it's even. Mine's not really even, but just for like example's sake, when you try this on, you're going to want to hold this down like this, okay? And just make sure that, you know, you have the fit that you're looking for. So let's do that one more time. Flip it over. When you're looking in the mirror, you're going to pull these back, just like this, and kind of hold them. You may even want to, like, you know, put a pin in here or a stitch marker, like these, in here to kind of hold it together. And then just to make sure that it's going to fit right. Now, once you have the fit that you want, go ahead and make sure that you have a needle threaded with enough yarn to go back and forth on the seam. So once one way and once the other way. So what we're going to do is, once we have this fitted, we're going to sew this seam right here and this seam right here. Okay, so go ahead, fit this, pin it, come back with threaded needle, and I'll show you guys how to sew this together. Okay, so we're back, and now you've got your hat in place and you've measured it. The next step that we're going to take right before we sew is we are going to count your crown stitches, okay? So this is the bottom, and this is going to be sewn to the back. So you want to take your stitch marker and connect the first 2 stitches that you're going to be sewing together on the crown seam, and then you're going to count evenly all the way down the crown until we get to where we're going to sew here in just a moment, okay? So let's flip your hat inside out here. Alright, and then what we're going to do when we're sewing is, you want to make sure that you line your item up like this. Okay, you don't want to sew it like crooked like that. Make sure that, you know, you line it up with the grain. Okay, so if you've got your needle here, alright, let's get started. And what I like to do is, obviously, I like to make sure everything's nice and even. So insert your needle into these 2 loops right here, the ones that are, whoops, closest to the edge. And then you're just going to want to grab the nearest loop on this side right here. Whoops. Alright, and then into the next one. Grab those 2. And you know, you can insert your needle into more than 1 loop on this side. I just choose to do it into 1. Make sure that when you sew, you're not going through the other side. Okay, and you're just going to follow this technique all the way down. All the way down to the end. You don't have to pick up, like each corresponding loop, but you want to make sure that, you pick up enough loops to where you don't have any gaps in this seam right here. All right, so I'll meet you guys right back down here, and then if you want, you can backtrack and make your seam even a little more secure by going back this way. Okay, so I'll meet you guys right back over here in just a sec. Okay, so we've sewn our first seam. Now at this point, you can backtrack sew along the edge. If you don't want to do that, just go ahead and weave your yarn in a few inches, or a couple inches here, and then just go ahead and tie it off. Make sure that you secure it though, so your hat doesn't come apart. And then next, you're going to sew this seam right here. So after you get this seam sewn and secure, then what we're going to do is flip our hat. Okay. We're going to flip our hat so that we can sew the crown. So go ahead and finish your other side seam here, and I'll meet you right back here with another needle with yarn, and make sure that you have enough to do the crown seam back and forth twice. I like to do the crown twice because, it is, going to be stretched out probably more than any other part of the hat. All right, so go ahead and finish up your side seam there, and I'll meet you guys back. All right, so we are back, and I've got my side seam sewn on the inside. Now, when you come back to the outside, the front, now it's going to be up to you on whether you want to secure this part or not. If you do, I recommend waiting until you sew the crown together just to see how it's going to pull once you finally get it all sewn together. And you may find that you don't like the way, it might bunch up or something. So I choose to leave like this little pocket right here open in between the inside seams. But you can sew it if you would like, okay? So from here, what we're going to do is we're going to sew our crown seam. And make sure that you have counted enough stitches that so it lines up properly, okay? So go ahead and grab your needle, and I'll meet you right back here. Okay, now it doesn't really matter which end you start at, whether you're going to start at the back of the crown or whether you're going to start at the front. But whatever you do, make sure that you match up stitch for stitch all the way down. Okay, so I'm going to start at the crown end, and I am just going to open my gap right here, okay, and I'm going to take the stitches that are close to the entrance of this little hole, but not too far in, okay? So you want to take the stitches that are really closest to the entrance, but not too far in. Grab both loops on one side, both loops on the other side. Make sure you have yarn long enough. And you're just going to do this technique all the way down. I'm not showing like a fancy method of sewing. Good grief, I can't even say that. But if you know how to sew, obviously fancier, feel free. I'm just showing like a basic sewing technique to get you, through the making of this hat. So go ahead and follow this technique all the way down. Grab both loops on each side, and you can go through each one twice, or you can come back up the seam. I'm going to choose to come back up my seam this way and finish off up here, but you are more than welcome to insert your needle twice in each set of loops instead of doing the opposite. Okay, so go ahead and finish your seam all the way, and I'll meet you right down at the end. Alright, so the next step is to make sure that your middle is still a middle, and if it's not, go ahead and even it out, okay? And then once you find out what the middle is in the back, you're going to count the same amount of stitches from the middle to the right side and the middle to the left side. And even though we have, for this particular turban hat, I have 15 stitches here and 15 here, and I don't really have enough to match up loop for loop. So what you're going to want to do is keep your item within these boundaries right here. And you might want to start at the middle and come out to one end and then come back and sew to the other end instead of just starting from one end to the next. So what you're going to want to do is, after your crown seam is nice and sewn, and basically your crown seam should coincide with the side seams that we did first, so that you don't have a gap in your crown. Alright? So it's going to be a little tricky because over here you don't have that many stitches left, but when you are done sewing your item, you're going to have, looks like quite a few stitches over here to fit in not so large of a space. So it's going to be a little crafty, but I'll show you how to achieve a nice fit, okay, without there being any bunches or gaps or gathers, okay? So go ahead and get your needle threaded, and I'll meet you guys right back here so we can start the back seam. Alright, so we are at the back seam. Okay, now I just took one of my tails here from when I was sewing the crown, and I just looped it in to secure the back while I'm sewing, okay? It's no big deal. So next, you're going to want to use your back loop on this side, okay? It's kind of rolled, and it looks like up close it looks different than it actually is. So this is the way it's supposed to be, but it rolls back like towards that way. Okay, so you're just going to grab this loop, basically your back horizontal loop, okay? And then on this side, you're going to grab both of your loops, hook it into the back horizontal loop, and pull your yarn through. Hope you guys can get a clear view of what I'm doing. Okay, and you're just going to finish this technique all the way to your marker over here on the right hand side, if this is the side that you started on. And just make sure that, you know, it's secure, but not to where there's a bump right over here when we finish, okay? And then you're going to do the same thing that you did on this side to the opposite side, making sure that you, like I said, you're not going to have enough loops really to fit in, so you may have to double up on one of the loops when you sew it in, and it's going to be okay because you know, just trust me, it'll be okay on this part if you only are off by maybe one loop or so, okay? So go ahead and sew up this side, and then I'll show you what it looks like when we've got this one side sewn. Alright, so I know I said I was going to show it when only one half was sewn, but what happened is it was bad audio, and I didn't want to unravel my sewing. So anyways, this is what it looks like when it's sewn all the way across. Okay, I still have my one marker over here because I went ahead and sewed up one of the side seams. Okay, this is one of the side crown seams. So let's just flip it out here. Okay. Oops. Alright, so you can see your item here is taking shape. And then you can see my side seam here. Works itself right nice and neat into the back seam. Okay, so what we're going to do next is I'm going to show you guys how to make this bigger gap fit into this smaller space right here. So what you're going to need is 2 strands of yarn that are about 12 to 18 inches, just because we're going to be using these yarns to gather up this top part right here, and so that it fits nice and neat in here, and then we're going to sew it. So go ahead and get a couple of strands of yarn, 12 to 18 inches long, and I will meet you right back here. Alright, so we have our thread and our needle. Starting at either end, either the front or the back of your project. You're going to want to, I'm sorry, let's flip this inside out first. Okay. Alright. So starting at the back or the front, and I have like a very little piece here holding this together, I just realized. Alright, so you're going to start here. You don't want to start too close to the edge. You want to start about a ½ inch in from the edge. And just take your yarn or your needle and just insert it into the loops, just like I'm doing. And just pull it through. You want to leave a tail of about 6 to 8 inches. And you're going to want to follow this technique all the way down the row until you get to the back here, okay? Alright, so we've got our first strand from one end to the next. Now what you're going to want to do again is you're just going to want to do the same thing, except you're going to do it right next to the other strand of yarn. So, using the same technique, insert your needle right next to the loops in the first strand that you made. You want it to be pretty close. Remember to leave a 6 to 8 inch tail. And then you're going to follow this technique all the way down to the end, just like you did with the last yarn. And then I'll meet you right back down here. Okay, so we've got both strands from one end to the next. So from here, what you're going to want to do is gently pull on these. You can see it's kind of gathering right here. You don't want to be super tight, and then you can kind of spread it out, okay? Come over to the other side and do the same thing. Well, all we're doing is easing this to fit over here when we get ready to sew. So you can see we have a little bit more gathering to do. This may take a couple of minutes and a little bit of patience because you don't want it to be gappy, but you do want it to fit. Alright, so it looks like I am almost there. So go ahead and continue to pull until you have reached the right tension. You'll know because you won't have any gap. Okay, so I'll meet you right back here. Alright, so you're going to want to make sure that you have enough stretch in here to maneuver all of your stitches to fit neatly, okay? And this is going to be a little tricky. You may have to take it apart to see where your stitches stand and if you like the way that you have sewn them. So go ahead and get your needle and carefully find out where your stitches match up. Okay, so let's see. It looks like mine are going to match up right here. just pull your yarn through, and don't make it tight because like I said, you may want to take this apart. And you can kind of go in the same stitch and gather up one of the other stitches. And remember, you want to kind of maneuver your stitches in there so that you don't have any gaps, okay? Don't be afraid to try this more than once. It takes a little bit of time. Gosh, I lost my stitch. Okay, there it is. To figure out what you like. Alright, so go ahead and finish sewing that. Squeezing all of your stitches in there. And then I'll meet you guys right back down here, so we can see what it looks like. Alrighty, so we have miraculously squeezed all our stitches in. And then you're going to want to do this to the other side if you haven't already. So let's turn it over and see what it looks like. Remember, you're going to want to take out your gathering threads. All right, let's see here. Here it is. I mean, you know, obviously I have to cut my threads and all that fun stuff. This is the back. All right, so this is the Tunisian crochet turban hat. Of course, you don't have to make this into a hat. You're more than welcome to, you know, crochet some and make it into a purse or a scarf or what the heck ever pleases you. All right, so if you guys liked this video, please give me a thumbs up, and thank you so much for tuning in with me, the Crochet Lady, and I will see you guys in the near future. All right, peace out.